Connor.
Hello, Aaron. It's nice to be back for another one.
It's been a while. I feel like I haven't been behind the desk. I haven't been streaming in the past couple weeks, so I might be a little rusty here. But I'm excited to have you back. I'm excited to
I
be
know,
back.
I know. And a lot has happened since the last stream. So they have announced the speakers for the No Code conference.
They have.
And I
They
know you
have.
applied.
I know you
So,
applied too. Yeah. So
yeah.
before we do that, I want to know who's in the chat, who's heard of No Code Conf. So let us know if you've applied to be a speaker, if you're signed up. So I'd love to know. I know that there's like a lot of news around No Code Conference. I'm super excited. I think I'm kind of can't wait for it to happen. So let us know in the chat if you've kind of signed up. And Connor, how about we start with like our experience of No Code Conf from a couple years back?
Yeah, so we actually met at the No Code conference in 2019. I actually was very lucky to get a spot to speak there because that meant that Webflow paid for my flights to San Francisco, which at the time was like a real big help being in New Zealand because,
Yeah.
it's not
Remember when
like
we used to
flying over
fly
there
to
from,
places? It was like
yeah, I
another
mean,
world.
exactly. I mean, like, the closest country to fly to from New Zealand is Australia, and that's 4 hours away. So you can imagine what a mission it is to get to San Francisco. But yeah, flew over, had a blast. Obviously, got to meet a lot of people there. So a lot of the people in the no code community, like Raymar, Pixel Geek, the FinSuite people, you,
Yeah.
Ben from MakerPad, got a chance to meet all of them and had a very, very fun time.
Yeah,
So
I actually remember meeting Colleen, who's in the chat, one of the first folks I ever
that's
met
right.
as part of the No Code conference, or just No Code generally. I think it was just a Twitter community in 2019. So I'm, I remember meeting you. I think over a drink, and I think you
Yeah.
probably had a few more after I left, and a good time was had by all. So folks, uh, yeah, so do go sign up. I know that they've made it free. It's online only for this year. So even though it's online, I'm sure folks are going to have an amazing time. I'm sure Webflow is going to put on a great, great show. And I know you, Connor, applied to speak. So give us, are you speaking? Give us the news.
Yes. So I am going to have a session at the NoCo conference. And in 2019, I did a talk on how I built the Unicorn Factory with Webflow, Airtable, and Zapier. And this year's talk is going to be along those lines with some updates and improvements. So at the time when I did that talk in 2019, I was really just like getting started with those tools. I didn't even really know that there were like a lot of other people out there that used like similar tools to build online platforms. But since then, I've done a lot with the Unicorn Factory, but I've also worked with a lot of other people who have used the same tools to build their own online marketplaces and own online platforms. So in my talk, what I'm going to be doing is going over some use cases for the Webflow, Airtable, and Zapier stack, and then also give a quick little rundown on where I think you should get started if you are starting at absolute zero. So I'm looking very forward to that. But enough about me. Aaron, I know you applied. So
Yeah,
what's
so
happening?
it's been tough not to tweet over the past 2 weeks to let folks know that I'll also be speaking at No Code conference, and it's probably one of those moments where you think back. For me personally, 2 years ago, going to the conference, meeting you all, and kind of that was my introduction to the No Code community, and I thought it'd be like a good opportunity to give back to the community and frankly just show how I automate all the things. So but in a more, not if you want to stream every week or do things like that, but really talk about how you can use Airtable and Webflow together to create and repurpose content in an efficient way. And the reason it's kind of full circle for me is that this is now my job, right? So at Airtable, I create content, and obviously I use Airtable and I repurpose that content. And so my life has kind of become what I am going to show. So I'm like super excited to provide resources to folks who are just like, hey, we're thinking of using Airtable to create content. We want to create something that's unique to our way of working, and we want to be really efficient. And that's really what I've been kind of building over the last 3 years now at Automate All the Things and at Airtable. So I'm really, really excited to share that I'll be speaking at No Code Conference. You will as well, and there's a huge lineup of amazing speakers. So we're both quite sad that it's online only, but I think that was the right decision that Webflow made to make it online only, given the world and its state. But I know that both of us and the whole team there are going to do everything we can to make it a successful event. And yeah, let us know in the chat if we're going to see you virtually. I'm hoping to meet as many people as I can, even though it's online. So really excited about that.
Absolutely. And I fully agree. I mean, I think everyone was looking forward to having another in-person event. And obviously, part of conferences is that element for sure. But, there's always going to be a next year. And I definitely think that considering the circumstances, like, it's a very good call to make. Yeah. So we'll just have a blast online. I'm sure Webflow's got a lot of cool things in store. And then hopefully next year we can do something in person.
Yeah, amazing. So let us know we got Penny's going to join, Colleen as well. I'm sure everyone in the chat has already signed up to No Code Conf. If you haven't already, go ahead and sign up. And, really excited to do this, but at No Code Conf. So, yeah, are we ready for the question of the month?
What are we going to be talking about today?
Yeah, so we've got a great question that was actually asked to me by Steven, who I actually weirdly had the chance to meet this summer. And then we're going to talk about Wized, which is a new plugin in the Webflow ecosystem. I'm going to talk about Carefree, which sort of is where I started working on Airtable as kind of a consultant almost, and really kind of highlighting the progress that they've done over. And then we're going to do some open Q&A. If you guys have questions about anything that we're talking about, feel free to drop them in the chat. And yeah, let's kick this off. All right, let me move. This is where I try to be efficient or try to do this properly. So move the agenda. I'm going to go ahead and share my browser here. And then I'm sharing it with you. There we go. Almost there, folks. Almost there. There we go. So, Connor, can you see my screen as well? We're good to go. Yep. Amazing. Okay. So this question comes from Steven, which is, how would you add validation to Airtable? So Steven came to me with this question, which I thought, Steven always comes to me with really good questions. Hey, Vency, good to meet you. Thanks for joining. Which is, how do you add validation to Airtable? And he had a very specific use case, which is a workflow that is extremely reliant on the button field. So as everybody knows, I'm a huge, huge button field fan. It's just such a good call to action. So if the stream is lagging, let me know. I should be good. YouTube is telling me that it's fine, but let me know if there's any issues with the live stream. So, and the issue that Steven faced was that he had so many workflows that would trigger off of the button using Zapier webhooks that people were afraid to press the button. So I have an example here, and I'll kind of walk you through it. Let's say that when you have a project that's in progress, you want a button that creates tasks, right? So it creates task 1, task 2, task 3. But when it's done, you want to go ahead and have a different button field that, maybe sends an email to the project owner, letting them know that the project is done. And maybe you've got, 30 or 40 zaps that run off of that button. Now, the issue is that people didn't want to click it because they were like, oh, do I have the right status? What is this button going to do? And so I wanted to provide kind of two options for validation. And I know you, Connor, are a huge button fan as well. Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead and add the first one, which is just checking whether the fields that are filled out are actually filled out or that they have a specific value. So let's say we only want to create tasks when the project is in progress. So let's go ahead and add a button field. So create tasks. Let's go ahead and add a button. And then we're going to assume that we're using a webhook, right? So I'm just using create tasks. I know there's better ways of creating tasks within Airtable using Airtable automations, but I just want to use an example with webhooks. So let's say call this create tasks. And then let's give it a boom button. And what we want this button to do is only be clickable when it's in progress. So let's say for now, I can just give it an empty. And you notice that when it's empty, you can't click, right? Because empty is not a URL, so it's just not clickable. So what we want to do is when the status is not in progress, so if status is in progress, that's when we want to go to Zapier.com. That's where you would put your webhook. But otherwise, we want it to be empty. So we can actually just do like this. So this is saying if the status is in progress, send the webhook, do the URL, do whatever the button needs to do. Otherwise, do nothing. So what this adds is a layer of validation within the button so that people who are kind of collaborators in the base are like, oh, okay, I should create tasks when the project is in progress. So you're actually adding validation directly into the button. And you can even add a little description that says, click this button only when in progress to create tasks. Boom. Yeah, so I'll show the formula again. Here you go. So that's one way of adding validation into your buttons, especially when you're triggering Zapier webhooks. I don't know if I'm looking at your face, Connor, and I'm not sure if you're like blown away.
No, this is great. I'm actually kind of surprised that it works as easy as that, because I have been using scripts to run webhooks or to trigger webhooks. So to see it work like that is actually very nice.
Oh, okay. We're over. Let me move myself out of the way here, folks. How can I? Oh, I can just zoom out here. How's that? Thanks, Colleen. So it's if status is in progress, go to Zapier.com. Otherwise, do nothing. And then do nothing is what allows the button to not be clickable. Sorry, go ahead, Connor.
Cool. No, I was just saying this is a really nice way to do it. I actually didn't realize that you could trigger webhooks like this because I was using scripts to trigger webhooks in the past. But knowing that this is a way to do it is actually really nice.
So let me, this actually kind of dovetails nicely with the second way I want to show, which is much more precise or gives you much more granularity. So what you're saying is that you would run the script, run the webhook from an Airtable script, because you're now an Airtable script expert, is what I'm understanding.
Yes. I'm getting there.
So I'm going to distill what you're saying here. So Connor says that instead of using the open URL, which you can trigger a webhook with, what you can do is run a script. Now, when I'm selecting run script, what you'll notice is that there's no more kind of URL. There's no URL that we're pointing to or no formula field. It says, well, what script do you want to write, right? So let's go. I've already written a script. So let me just go select an existing script and I'll show you what it does. But first, why would you run a script is that it gives you much more control, right? So one example is one we just did, we said there's only one URL we could trigger. However, with a script, you can say, hey, depending on different, things that are happening, if 2 or 3 things are true, go ahead and run this script or pull this information and run this other webhook. That's what's available when you run a script. So you can be much more granular and much more controlled, right? So let me give you an example of this. So let's say that our script, so I'm just creating tasks. What I'm doing here is I'm actually passing this record into the script. Let me just really quickly show you the outline of the script. So it's going to input that record into the script, but then actually prompt you to say like, hey, this is going to create tasks. Are you sure you want to do this? Right? So that's the first thing that this script does. And it adds a layer of validation, which is kind of answering Steven's question, which is, how do I let people know when they click the button, what's going to happen? Right? So you can actually write that in the script itself. And then you can also do the validation of like, oh, is the record in progress? Oh, okay, if that's the case, go ahead and run the webhook. Otherwise, tell the user like, hey, your project is not in progress, so I'm not going to go ahead and create the tasks. You can do this in a formula, but what I love about this is that it actually prompts the user of like, hey, this is going to happen. Do you want this to happen? Yes, no. You can create really cool logic. So let me, instead of just kind of talking through the script, let's run one. So let's say it's in progress. We're going to go ahead and click here, create tasks. And it said, hey, this script is going to create tasks. Are you sure you want to do that? Yes. Checks if all fields are valid. Project status is in fact in progress. And then it runs the webhook, which you can then send to Zapier, or you can even use the script to create the tasks. You can do all that. But then let's say that the project is not in progress. Let's say it's done. You can create tasks. And you can still say, hey, are you sure? Yep. And it says project is not in progress, so we're not going to go ahead and create the tasks. So this is two things. One, it's prompting that user. Are you sure you want to do this? Yes. Oh, in fact, you can't. Here's what you got to go ahead and do. So I personally love this like double validation, especially as a kind of hardcore button user.
Nice. That's really cool.
So Steven, let me know if this answers your question. So I'm already seeing some folks who are going to use this. I'm happy to share the base just so you can get the outline of the script. So I'm going to go ahead and share that. I'm going to drop that into the chat. I knew that, Steven, this would be right up your alley. So there you go. You can go ahead and copy that and you'll get the kind of script outline and should give you everything you need. Amazing. So I'm gonna assume that this answers your question. Amazing. Appreciate that. If folks want to ask questions, you can always either DM me on Twitter or there's a form link that I'm not going to find now and I'll drop it in the chat later. Yeah, this is for me, like I love the call to action of the button and I love the fact that it kind of has validation built in. So I'm a huge fan of this kind of workflow with scripting. There are some limitations. Unfortunately, you can't run an automation from a button. Hopefully that'll come out. If that's the case, that would be amazing because then you could run the script in the automation, although you wouldn't have that like second validation. So there's some drawbacks here as well. Cool. Connor, any questions before we move on to talking about Wized?
No, I mean, I think a quick comment is, so I've been playing around with scripts for probably 2.5 to 3 weeks now. And right at the beginning, I was kind of a bit, I wouldn't say intimidated, but like when you just look at the code, it kind of seems like a lot to process at once. But I think if they're like very specific use cases that you're trying to solve, there are a lot of really good resources out there. I watched Aron's stream that he did with, what was his name?
Geo,
yeah. So that was a really good starting point, but I found some really good use cases to use scripts and buttons for. And one of them is inside of Integromat. One of the things I find very frustrating with Integromat is, unlike in Zapier, where you have a trigger step where a record moves into new view, you don't really have that in Integromat. So in Integromat, what happens is every 10 or 15 minutes or whatever, depending your plan is, it goes through all of your records that sit in that view. And if there is a record in that view, it will run the workflow. And that leaves a lot of room for mistakes. For example, certain records not moving out of the view as soon as the automation is run and a whole bunch of other things. So a way that you can actually recreate the new trigger in Vue trigger that sits inside of Zapier is actually by creating a button that you can then use to trigger a webhook inside of Integromat, and then that starts the workflow. So I've been using that a lot. For example, sending follow-up emails. Now, instead of having to manually move records into Vue, I can just click a button, and that then triggers the workflow inside of Integromat. And yeah, it's been a real game changer. So definitely worth looking into.
So I think we should rename Automate All the Things to button plus simple scripts plus webhooks. Like that, I think, encapsulates the three things we talk about pretty much every week. So I'm glad that you're now a convert. Welcome to the button plus script plus webhook team. So do encourage everyone. Play around with button, play around with webhooks, play around with scripts, simple scripts, and that's pretty much all you need to know. That's all. This is what the stream is about. It's just getting people to use buttons, scripts, and webhooks.
For sure.
Awesome.
All right.
Cool. All right. Let's get to our second kind of topic today. You came to us with this, or you came to me anyway, to talk about Wized or Wized. Or what are you calling it?
I'm calling it Wized because it reminds me of wizardry.
Okay, that makes sense.
I might be wrong, but yeah, I think I saw the Wized in the chat, so maybe whoever's in charge of that account can let us know which one is right. But yes, Wized. So I recently made a video on my channel looking at a few different tools that you can use to level up Webflow projects. And one of the tools that I reviewed was Wized. So I just want to say straight off the bat, I haven't had a full play around with Wized yet, but I have watched their demos on how to set up everything. And long story short, what Wized is a way to build a backend for your Webflow projects. So as we all know, Webflow has certain limitations when it comes to building backends, user accounts, processing payments, all of those types of things. And what Wized does is it allows you to create a lot of the functionality that you might see in tools like Bubble or even something like Ycode to some extent, and integrate it directly into your Webflow project. Meaning you can still use Webflow to just build your entire front end, but then you can use Wized to basically build a backend, set up workflows, set up user accounts, process payments. And this tool looks very, very, very promising. So, I mean, in terms of how the setup works, it's pretty straightforward. Like with most third-party integrations, you just grab a code snippet from their website, you embed it into your Webflow project, and then what you can do is jump into Wized and start setting up workflows, logic, databases, and connecting it directly to it. And the cool thing about it is Wized has built this to look quite similar to Webflow, which means that if you are a heavy Webflow user, you will be familiar with the interface. And so in a nutshell, it is going to be something that is going to potentially allow us to build more app-like platforms inside of Webflow faster. There are two specific use cases that they have made little tutorials about on their channel. One is to build a task management app, which is phenomenal. And the other one is to build a client project dashboard. So if you run an agency and you kind of want to let your customers know how your projects are progressing, then you'll be able to use Wized to basically build the client dashboard. And I'm really excited to see how this is going to work out. I'm going to start working on a little demo soon that I can show people. But if you just want to get started immediately, just watching these videos is a fantastic place to start.
So I am, Connor, to be frank, a big fan of my current stack. Webflow, Airtable, Zapier, Memberstack, Parabola if I'm being fancy. And then there's like there's a decision tree that is getting harder and harder to nail down, like Y code or Memberstack, Outseta. How do you kind of navigate? Okay, I'm gonna use Wized. I'm gonna call it Wized. I think it's Wized. Or Wized makes no sense. Wized needs an H. It would be Wizzed if it was Wized. It's definitely Wized. But beyond that, how do you think about where this fits into that more broader ecosystem?
Okay, that's a really good question. So obviously there are tools out there right now like Memberstack, Outseta. There are a few other ones out there that basically allow you to do a few of the things that you can do with this tool. And so my main thought on the matter is there are a few things that Wized or Wized will allow you to do that you currently can't do with the main tools, for example, Memberstack or Outseta. One of the things that I am very interested to play with is the Airtable integration. So right now, if you want to build like user accounts with the with like a link to a Webflow CMS, that's pretty much what you are limited to inside of Memberstack. But even with that, there are significant limitations that come with only being able to use one particular collection inside of Webflow. What you'll be able to do with Wized is actually import an entire Airtable table and then filter it based on users. So for example, you can have a table like you just showed us for your project, and associated with that is a particular customer. Now you can just embed that table into your project and then with Wized filter it out based on whoever is logged in at the time. And so in short, what you'll see with a lot of these tools like Memberstack and Outseta is they solve quite specific use cases. So membership accounts, online courses, those types of things. But whereas what I think is happening with Wized, or what I'm hoping to see from Wized, is that it's going to move a lot more towards a tool that gives you a lot more freedom in terms of the use cases that you solve for. Now, I do want to say that it is still very early days. So I am definitely not saying that one is better than the other. I think it's still to be seen what kind of use cases are solved with this tool. But one of the things that I think is promising about it is just that it solves for wider use cases.
So you're kind of seeing that this is maybe a layer of that like app builder functionality that's not going all in with like a bubble, right? But it's not solving for something vertical, right? Which is like memberships or email. So it's kind of a in between. And there's a great question from Kyle, which I think is like a really good one, which is, what is the learning curve, right? How difficult is this to get started? And, do you see this as like a good place to start for, your MVPs, or more for like, okay, this actually works. Let me build something more complex. Let me build out with Wized, which we're now confirming is the right way to say it.
It looks like we were both right. Look at that. It's like Zapier and Zapier. Very conflicting. To answer that question, Kyle, so, I mean, it really depends on your starting point. So if, like, I know my way around Memberstack, I know my way around Zapier, I know all of those. And there was definitely a learning curve involved with that. If you are starting from scratch and you are not here, you are not familiar with Memberstack, then it makes sense to look into a tool like this if it solves your use cases. So in order for me to build a lot of the functionality that I have inside of the Unicorn Factory, it involves a lot of hacking together, which I think is quite difficult to pick up if you're just getting into the tools. So I use a bit of custom code. I have also managed to set up a few things that I think are not very common ways of solving certain use cases. So that takes time to learn. If you're starting from, but if something like Wized solves this use case straight out of the box, more of the use cases in one is going to take less time to learn.
Hey, Connor, can you hear me? Hello, hello.
Yeah, I think I cut out twice.
Oh.
Hello.
Hey, Connor, testing. Can you guys hear me? Test, test, test. There we go. We're back.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Hello, Connor, can you hear me?
I can. Hello.
Testing. 1, 2, 3. All right. Sorry, folks. I just had to reset. Connor, can you hear me? I just had to reset my stream here. My Wi-Fi crashed. Hello, testing. Can you hear me, Connor?
Yes.
All right. Sorry about that, folks. My Wi-Fi crashed. So we're back. Let us know. Give us a thumbs up in the chat. Sorry about that. Okay.
All right.
All right. Sorry about that, folks. So, folks, you were answering what you would use Wise now. Wized, whatever it is. Sorry, folks.
Shall I sum up my answer again to Carl's question?
Go for it.
I'm not exactly sure where I cut out.
Just give us a brief one. I think you lagged out
so
from the beginning.
The summary for what stack you should learn. If you are already familiar with Memberstack and Zapier, stick with that for now. I'm definitely going to be sticking with that for now because I already understand how it all works. If you're just getting started or you haven't chosen a stack at all, it probably works just trying out something new like this, because I feel like it's going to solve a lot of use cases that might save you having to learn how to use Zapier and Integromat and all those other tools as well.
But I'm going to stick with my stack. I'll be honest. I can't learn another tool. But if folks use it and find really cool use cases, please let Connor and I know. I'd love to showcase a built-out project. Showcase one every month. So if you build something really cool with Wized or Wized, let us know, and we'd love to showcase it.
Cool.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, let me share my screen with you one more time, Connor. Let me do that. Sorry, folks. There we go. All right. Okay, sorry about that. Let's talk about Carefree. So this is our project of the month. And the reason I picked Carefree is that Carefree is actually, near and dear to my heart. Let me tell you what it is first. So Carefree is a charity out of the UK built by Charlotte, who I knew. And what it does is that it takes hotel rooms that are unused. So the occupation rate, I used to work in travel for hotels, on a good hotel hovers at 75%. So they'll have 25% of their rooms that are unoccupied on any given evening. And so, Charlotte had this great idea because in the UK, there's this kind of concept that is not actually, I guess, maybe not has a formal name for in North America, which is called carers, people who take full-time care of their parents or relatives who, can't care for themselves either because of age or sickness. And it's like a labor that goes unpaid. And these people never take a break, right? So they're taking care of their family 24/7. They have work just like all of us. And she had this idea to connect these carers with unused hotel supply. So you as a carer can say, hey, I want to take a couple of days off. I don't have money or the ability to. So they'll help you find a free room that is not being used and you could stay there. And so let me just quickly share their website here. And I'm going to drop it in the chat as well. So Charlotte, let me know that they're always kind of looking for volunteers. So if you guys are interested in Carefree, and the reason I thought it was appropriate for no-code talk is actually because it's all built with no code. So Charlotte reached out to me, I think over 2 years ago, and said like, hey, I have this idea. How can we make an MVP to create this marketplace, not a marketplace, but like kind of a connecting between carers and the travel industry. And since then, it's completely blown up, and it's still today all built on no code. So they have two areas. So they have a search, a stack, right, which is finding unused hotel supply. And then another one, which is people referring carers. So finding carers, validating that they are in fact carers, and then giving them access to that search supply. So MakerPad shared an interview where they talk to their CTO and talk about all the different tools that they use. So they've got Front for communication, Typeform for all forms and things like that. SumSub, which was cool, which I didn't know, which is kind of a way to validate users' identity. So if you want to make sure that people are who they say they are with photo IDs and things like that, which I thought was really cool. Big Memberstack users. You can see that I no longer participate because Airtable is not one of the tools mentioned. And that's probably because I started working at Airtable and then couldn't spend as much time working with Charlotte. But do encourage that non-technical folks can have just using no-code tools.
Great use case.
So so that's it. That's all. This is just a big shout out to Carefree. Shout out to Charlotte for all the amazing work that she does. And if you do want to help her or are interested more in the stack, I'm happy to connect you with Charlotte. She is always looking for more folks. And, for me, it was actually one of my first, if you want, consulting gigs or whatever, just really trying to get my hands dirty with no code. And it was a great way to start. So do encourage you all to check it out. So before we go, that was our last kind of topic. There are some questions from the chat. So we've got a question from Omkar. Hopefully I'm saying that right, which is a great question for you, Connor. Let me try to find it. Here we go. Question: confused between Integromat and Zapier. Anyone has a particular advantage over the other? I'm sure, Connor, you can spend the next 10 minutes talking to us about Zapier versus Integromat.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, both tools serve the same purpose. They allow you to automate certain workflows. Now, there are definitely some advantages that Zapier has over Integromat. For me personally, I feel that Zapier is a bit more reliable from my own experiences. Like I've had moments where certain workflows inside of Integromat did not work and couldn't figure out why. On the other hand, Integromat has quite a few additional steps or tools that Zapier doesn't have. So one that I have discovered that is really good is called the Iterator, I believe. And basically what that will allow you to do is to cycle through an array of records that you might have linked inside of an Airtable record. And that is something that you can't do with Zapier. So in most cases, if you just want to do basic workflows, Zapier is a great tool to get started with. It's quite user-friendly. It's quite intuitive. As soon as you want to build slightly fancier things, you're going to find yourself with a few limitations with Zapier, and that's where Integromat kind of fits into it all. So I think for most people just setting up workflows, I'll definitely start with Zapier. And then as you evolve, you can then start using tools like Integromat to do more fancy stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree. So Zapier, usually more reliable, sometimes less powerful than Integromat. The learning curve on Integromat is a little steeper. Note, a lot of folks prefer Integromat because it's cheaper. I'm more of the advice that like, whether you're using Integromat or Zapier, your time is worth more than whatever those tools charge you. So I usually try not to anchor too heavily on price unless you have a very, very heavy task usage. And one example of that is the Tweet 100, where the way I had built it, it checks every single tweet that a member tweets and then checks whether it's the first of the day. that was thousands of tasks each day. So in that case, Integromat was better. So those are kind of the variables that you should think about when deciding between Zapier and Integromat. I am going to link a article a newsletter that I'd written around Integromat versus Parabola versus Zapier. So kind of thinking about how do you decide between the three. Parabola, less popular these days when they've raised their pricing and much more e-commerce focused, but I think still a relevant article today. So one more question, and I think we've got a question from Vianney. Hopefully I'm saying that right, which is, will Memberstack survive the announcement of Webflow of their native membership platform during No Code Conference? So there's a lot of assumptions, I think, in this question, which I think is great. One is that there is a membership functionality coming out of Webflow. We saw that with the Pixel Geek stream 2-3 weeks ago. I don't know. Time is what is time? I don't know about you, Connor, but my answer is like Memberstack will survive and will thrive, right? I think Memberstack has heard and Webflow has talked about memberships for years now, right? And if it was so advanced and so as good, if you will, as Memberstack, they probably would have announced it by now. So I don't expect Webflow to release this super great membership platform that will rival Memberstack. And I think it's interesting. It'll push Memberstack to create more functionality, to go deeper, to iterate more. And I'm a big fan of competition in terms of tools. So my answer is no, and I'm excited to see how they'll compare.
Yeah, my answer is no as well, only because I think people sometimes forget that Memberstack doesn't just serve Webflow. They actually have a way wider community base in like actual people that actually code. So I feel that overall, Memberstack only makes up a smaller fraction, or at least the users of Memberstack only are not that many Webflow users as we may think. So I think they'll be fine. I think the next thing is that they've been working on 2.0 for a long time now, which I'm hoping will be done by this year. And that will probably be an improved product that will have a lot of feedback and learnings embedded into it that they've picked up over a year. So I think you kind of nailed it a bit. Like, we don't know what Webflow is going to be launching with. When they launched Webflow e-commerce, that was very, very MVP. And I know a lot of people who were waiting for a very long time for Webflow e-commerce who ended up just sticking with the Shopify integration or with, I think it was Foxy was another tool that people were using. So I think, will it make a dent? Potentially. I think only time will tell.
Okay.
But I think overall they're going to be fine.
Can I share a gripe? I'm not a complainer, but I have a gripe to share, Connor, and I don't often do this. Can products please talk no 2.0? I hate this idea of like 3.0 or like we're on version not like it's a SaaS product. Just release. Just keep it. It's not like you want to make an announcement out of it. I get it. You can stagger features, but versioning on the web makes no sense. It's not, I'm not going to download Memberstack. I think a lot of companies do this. Integromat has been doing this. Like, just release the thing. It's okay. Don't have to number it. That's it. I'm excited for both of these. No numbers.
I think it's mostly code for we are not going to ship any more product improvements until we've launched this really big update that we've been working on for a year.
Yeah, and I'm like, just cut it, just release it into smaller pieces. Like, we're all like, oh, great, it's 1.0 is dead. Let's stop using this product until they launch 2.0. That said, that might gripe. I have to end by saying, Duncan, if you're watching this, I love you. I love the product. Just no numbers, please. That's it. Okay, I think that's a good place to end No Code Talk. I don't know if there's any other questions that folks had. Apologies for the little choppiness today. No, that's cool. So really appreciate you, Connor, for joining. I have one small announcement that I will not be streaming next week, and I have a very cool streaming related announcement that's going to come early next week. AATT 2.0. No, I'm joking. I will share more on Monday or Tuesday. You're going to see something pop up on the AATT calendar that's a little different than what you're used to. So it's going to happen next Thursday. I'm going to share more early next week. So no stream next week and back in 2 weeks. Okay. Well, thanks so much for joining, y'all. Really appreciate. Great to see your faces. Great to see your face, Connor. And we'll be back next month for No Code Talk. Bye, Connor.
Bye.
Have a good one. Bye, y'all.